Welcome back to the Go AI podcast. We have a very special guest today. Would you mind introducing yourself to our audience and telling us who you are and who you're with?
Absolutely. Hi, everyone. I am just super excited to be a part of this amazing podcast. My name is Erica Shoemate, and I am a AI strategist and policy consultant. And specifically, I am the powerhouse, if I say so myself,
Yes.
behind the boutique consulting firm, the Id Strategy Group. And prior to becoming my own solopreneur, I actually spent over a decade serving as a career intelligence professional, serving at the FBI and across the US intelligence community, working a plethora of things from national security to criminal matters, also spending time overseas, serving in high threat areas, really working not only to keep Americans safe, literally domestically, but also abroad, and also those who are aligned with US interest. And when life happened, as I call it, I actually pivoted in 2020 at the height of COVID, and I pivoted into big tech, serving as a policy head for Twitter 1.0, where I was the head of Site Policy Americas, focused on safety and cybercrime. And think the years of summer 2020 all the way through summer 2022. If it was happening in the news, it was happening in my life. And that short, big span, you honestly cannot replicate the type of issues and impact that I had and had to deal with, working very closely with our product and engineering teams before AI was hot, knowing how the sausage is made, looking at machine learning models, working very closely to ensure that the policies that my team was creating, that they were being implemented and integrated into the technology appropriately, and when they were not, what stop gaps and guardrails do we have in place? And once I did really some like literally, I would call it life's work while I was at Twitter. And then from Twitter, I went and was recruited by Amazon, and specifically Amazon Ads. And I served as the global head of display and sponsor ad policies, focused on ensuring that policies around things that you might see as a customer related to like static ads, sponsor ads, and things that you're being served are things that one are actually part of the international advertising standards that they comply. And then two, ensuring that it is not only something that is compliant at a regulatory standpoint, but also that it's something that the customers of Amazon would want to actually see. And then another part of that work included really taking a deep dive into uh, content featuring or appealing to children, specifically if there were ads that had, babies or toddlers close to like bodies of water. Was there an adult inside of these photos? And, a child, let's say they're on a scooter, but are they in the middle of the street? And, what does that look like with an adult, without an adult, or even with an adult? Is it safe or is it not safe? And how we enforce those things, and also things around real money gaming, as we think about like a lot of the things that are changing just in our society as a whole, and particularly here in the US, when you think about some of the online gambling sites, and thinking about football and basketball and the impact it has to the community. So some of the work was around that as well. And then finally, the last thing I'll say about me is I am also a maternal health strategist and advocate as a result of my own daughter's journey. And so I really say I'm just a fascinating soul, humbly, because I cut across so many different industries, and being able to utilize my lived experience and professional experience really puts me in a very, I would say, vantage point for a lot of different key issues, especially around AI, and not only how is it used, but also the policies around it. How are they being integrated or not? And also here in America, what are we doing or not doing? and looking at it from a broader standpoint at the international level, looking at how other countries are advancing and doing things maybe a bit differently and being able to speak to that. And my North Star is always around ensuring any policies that I'm focused on is human centered first. And that also working with companies to say you can have people first and profit as well. So
Yeah.
that's a little bit about me.
You truly operate at the intersection of AI policy, national security, digital trust and safety, and like just your career pivot strategy, like what you have done. I mean, you've gotten your PhD the hard knocks way, right? And like that to me is my favorite type of soul because you then can guide others to do so. And that's what I
Exactly.
feel like you're doing. And it's just, I'm truly grateful that our paths crossed and you are here and we can shine a light because your voice is needed now more than ever. So, the intersection of AI policy and national security, like, what does that mean exactly?
That intersection of AI and national security, whoa. I
Yeah,
always tell people that you really can't talk about technology without thinking about the security apparatus around wherever you are, right? And when we think about I always tell people I love AI personally. I believe that it levels the playing field as it relates to accessibility. Not only accessibility from a financial standpoint, you think about the things that you would traditionally have had to outsource. Even like no AI is not an attorney. It is not qualified to give legal advice. But let's be clear, you can also put these things in there and you can fact check it and it can save you a lot of money or the money you never had and at least have some grounding. And as someone who just learned a little over a year ago that I'm also neurospicy, it also levels the playing field when it relates to people whose brains work different. And I have a lot of thoughts. I'm a visionary. Jenna, as you said, like there's so many things that I love, and I'm not all over the place. I am very clear on the things that I love and what I do. And when you talk about this intersection of the AI and national security, what I worry about and what keeps me up at night is really thinking about being an American in the US government and some of the infrastructure that had been created in the previous administration. And this is not related to like whatever party affiliation, it's strictly
exactly.
related to the policies. And
Black and white. Like, let's look at the facts here, like of what.
yeah. Yeah. And the previous administration had actually had a very robust blueprint as it relates to AI and AI implementation here in the US and how companies should work together to ensure that, we are all basically having a similar voice and how we think about that trust, that safety and people's protection of data. All those things literally like so amazing, beautiful the NIST frameworks, which those still exist, but a lot of that kind of like at the highest levels, that framework is no longer even available. Granted, the new administration has just recently rolled out some new executive orders, but I would challenge anyone to like read them, skim them. The concern that I have is this balance of, being able to move fast and trying to get ahead of like other countries at what cost though? Because you have an
Mhm.
environmental, um, you have a environmental responsibility as well, and people want to ignore that. But the problem is we're going to leave this earth and its minerals and all the things that it gives to us in a much worse shape if we are not very like strategic and intentional on how we balance looking at even environmental issues. And in the current new executive orders, there is a lot of things that are trying to be worked around, not even having to follow some of the laws that are out there as it relates to even the environmental standpoint. And again, we know that AI requires a lot of power to be able to be implemented. And so when you think about the national security piece of this, think about like your critical infrastructure. Think about your the grids. Think about like
Yeah.
literally water sources and all the like those things really matter. And I'll stop there.
Well, and that's what it's like. I feel like we're in a race a little bit.
Yeah.
That's a little, we're all running, and who is, you mentioned the country, who, when even if you do, if we are first to something, then what? Like whoever
Then
is
what?
first, aren't they setting those policies? Like that's there is going to be somebody who's first, right? Like
Right. And that's the thing you have to
so,
think about. And that's
yeah,
and so to your point about like this national security perspective too, one of the things that I'm always thinking about as well is like the disproportionate impact of some of this harm that can happen when you're going too fast. You're not thinking about the people. And we know with technology, emerging technology and innovation, what we generally see is that, okay, it was great. The innovation started out great. It's always great until it's not. And generally, when it's not, the people who are disproportionately impacted are generally the underrepresented communities that look like me
they
and where I
are.
come from.
It's not
Like
usually, it's they are.
literally. And you think about that, like, I've heard some crazy things like, well, let's put this data center here, but then this neighborhood or area already has an oil refinery that's blowing God knows what. And it's like, okay, you already got that going on. Why would you then want to add on top of
Redundant.
that? Right.
Mhm.
And it's like, oh, well, since they're already enduring anyway. And it's kind of that piece, the people piece. And the thing that I actually worry about when we think about some of the threat angles too is AI being used as, cyber warfare. And not that it has not happened. And I always tell companies it's so important that if you think about the almost red teaming, like the things that could go awry, the problem is a lot of companies are working to build fast, but they're not building policies alongside this moving fast. And that is the national security also implication. Like I know a lot of for-profit companies like to think about national security as something that don't have to do with them. I'm sorry, it does. Very much so.
Yeah.
And it is really thinking about my like your business bottom line as a profit, but also the irreparable harm. And what I do love about thinking about our apparatus here in the US is that you do see a lot of states that are passing various laws, thinking about users, data protection, privacy. You do see, some things around global use policies, even within some companies. But I still worry that the data that is being used to train these AI models are very Eurocentric. And so if you're not accounting for the rest of the world, then you could be missing a key point. Let's say you have AI that is trying to track threat actors, let's just say,
Yeah.
and you do not have a good picture, or as we call TTPs, like thinking about the tactics and procedures and around this said group. If you do not know enough, or you think you know enough, but it's only confirmation bias, and the people that are saying, yeah, 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 this is great, are the same people that literally formed the system, and you don't have anyone else to actually check the system, then what do you have? You literally have an echo chamber, which
Yep.
could then unfortunately be the part that could cause the crisis, the national security crisis, because we all know too, you think about 9/11, and God rest, everyone's souls that unfortunately lost their lives. It's something that's very near and dear to me, and some things that working in a government around post 9/11, you think about what actually transpired, and this is just at the logistical point, and AI has a lot of logistics. So I want your audience to stay with me here.
Yeah.
If you think about how things, following what happened in 9/11 and like the whole intelligence failure, right? The same can happen with AI, because we have to remember that everybody is not from this westernized world. And I think we get so caught up in like, oh, it cannot happen. Oh no, we can't do this. Oh no, they can't do that, because we're living in our Western mindsets
The
about
old way of thinking.
exactly. And when I say the Western mindset, I mean, just more so very homogenous. It doesn't even include a lot of times these diverse communities, because I can tell you, as a first generation college grad from inner city Memphis, my entire worldview is so vastly different, even being educated, than someone who never had those life experiences, right? And so I just want to tell your audience that you think about, please imagine beyond your wildest dreams. And if you can't imagine, if you're not the visionary, if you're not the person to be able to think outside the box, that's okay. Make sure you have someone that does. And when you are working with AI, so that they can actually bring those kind of alternative competing hypotheses, this is my Intel days, and really thinking about, mm, maybe this could happen. And if it did, will we be ready for it? And what have we put in place to be ready for it? And those are the things that I think about with AI and national security is like, are we even prepared for when, I'm just going to say it, something goes bad, because it will.
Yeah. Well, and when it does, and
Yep.
yeah.
And what
The
are
one,
some
go ahead, Connor.
what are some key like actionable insights, as in like things that businesses and other organizations can start doing today that you've found in your work that you've identified as like, oh, this is what pretty much every organization that you meet with, they need to start doing this as soon as possible.
Yeah, excellent, excellent question. One of the things that I always tell businesses around their AI, do they actually have internal guardrails, global use policies, beyond just the legal requirements, right? Your, user terms of service. Okay, great. Do you also have things on like what you can and cannot do with your AI? Do you have people that are monitoring what is happening with your AI? Like as it begins to learn and train, you cannot take your eye off the ball, because AI will do what AI is going to do.
What does that look like, Erica? Like, what's one
Mhm.
thing over the course of like 90 days where it's like, okay, we should go back to this? I don't know if it's like a sentence or is like there's
A
something
prompt, right? You're looking for certain
from,
keywords. Like
okay,
one way you can, audit is really looking at certain keywords. Let's say, words that we typically know are around, let's just say hate speech.
okay,
And let's say that the hate speech is, I'm just going to go back to 2016, 17, of like all the uprising of like thinking about the movement of like white nationalism, and you're seeing like certain keywords that are being used, even thinking about like a word like locked and loaded,
okay,
even thinking about those things, and it's the context that matters, right?
exactly.
And taking a look at some of those quote unquote could be dirty words. Like definite dirty words is things like, looking at a monkey. If you see the N word but it has an ER with it, again, this context, and you want to like,
Context matters. Absolutely.
right? And while you have trained your models, let's just say this is from a content online standpoint, but if you have trained your models to be like, nope, that's bad, you want to make sure that it actually is doing those things. And one way to look at that, one is audit, and two, when it's flagged from users as well, that it allowed this or it didn't allow this. I'll give you an example of like audit that didn't necessarily violate a policy, but I'm trying to ask AI to give me a diverse image of women that are professional, that are, doing some amazing like collaboration together in a professional setting. It took me like 6 times to get an image of diverse women. This is like literally in the last like month and a half.
Yeah.
And when it was diverse, it was like everyone was still on the lighter side. Like that within itself is a
Yeah.
problem. I'll give you one time.
We did. It's so funny you bring that up. I'm teaching this AI class at the University of Louisville, and if the
I
students are listening,
love
we did a prompt, and it was just give me an example or give me describe what a CEO looks like. And
Ooh,
they describe, and so it was so interesting the amount of people in the room where the CEO was a white male, and it was just, and that was it, professional. And it gave like demographic examples. And so it was just so funny. Like, it's not
Hmm.
funny, but like, obviously I'm a CEO, and it didn't say anything about females in general
Right.
being a part of that conversation. So that to me was just a little example of like, and put that in the hands then of kids or someone who's learning, like that's not truth, right?
That
So,
part, and also reminding people that, to your point, where they're getting the sources, um,
mm-hmm.
right? And not, and I'm going to tell people because I know the generations are changing. It is not social media. Social
Yes.
media will tell you, literally, I'm telling you this as someone who's worked one. Social media will tell you they are not the arbiters of truth, right?
Yeah.
Which I get some of it. The problem I have with it, I think that there is a level of responsibility that we owe to society to, if things are on your platform that we know to be harmful, we know.
Yeah, it's like tobacco. Hey, put that disclaimer on. It's gonna kill you. But think of
Right.
how long that took. Like, come on. Like, think of
That's
how
the
long
part.
that took. So now it's like, okay, we have AI, we have this moving so fast, the gap, which is why I think this is so important that your voice is heard, because you're at this intersection of like the
And no
policy
one calls and reaches
department.
out to me. I'm not so popular in the sense of like people don't
They
know
should.
me like that. And so you keep getting, honestly, and no knock to anyone, but like getting the same people. But it's the depth for me that I could literally give you all types of scenarios as a CEO, as someone who is like head of like, product and innovation. And the last thing I want to make sure, Connor, before we wrap, that you, for your audience, the top three things that I would say for any company CEO, COO is being able, one, to operationalize responsible AI. Don't just announce it. Bottom line is policy on paper means nothing if the systems, as I talked about, incentives and accountability don't even reflect it, right? Again, going back to be able to audit and do some of those different things to make sure it's doing what it's supposed to do. And secure, I talked about this earlier about logistics, securing the AI supply chain and the workforce. AI isn't just tech, it's a whole ecosystem of risk, and you need to own your impact and you need to own the risk around your product innovation. And companies literally need to be thinking about not just securing the front door, the back door, and everything in between, right? And then the last piece is centering humans. I talk about it so much, particularly those most impacted. AI systems shape how people live, from hiring, healthcare, financial access or not, safety. And most of the time, the neglected people are those that are least likely to be in the room. And those are the three things that I speak to, and to honestly see all these companies laying off people in an oversaturated market is something that really concerns me, because they're looking to AI to like fix this thing. But I'm like, well, who is keeping tabs of the AI that is being implemented?
No.
So again, voices is really important in this regard.
That ties it up nicely. Erica, thank you for joining us. Where do we find you?
Yeah, absolutely. You can find me on Instagram at the Policy Goddess. So that's THE and policy, and then goddess, GODDESS. And you can also find me on LinkedIn under Erica S. You may or may not find me, but I'll make sure to drop the links. And also my website, leadwithinstrategy.ai. I talked a bit about my maternal health work. Find me at ericalshumate.com for maternal health resources.
And we will put all of that in the show notes. Thank you, Erica. We
Thank
appreciate
you.
you, and continue to spread your light.
Oh, thank you so much, Jenna. Thank you, Connor.
Thanks for coming on Go AI.